Welcome back to the Act Two podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I am Tasha Hume.
And I am Josh Hallman.
And as a reminder, we are Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This podcast is just one of the things that we do. Thank you for joining us here. You can subscribe to the podcast, rate us, give a comment, tell us the weirdest thing that you've ever been told about your script. But you could also DM us with questions and topic suggestions, or if you just want to check in with your writing life and let us know what's going on, you can do that at ActTwoWriters@gmail.com, all spelled out, or on our Instagram and Twitter at ActTwoWriters. I am Story Thursday on Instagram.
And I am Josh Hallman on Instagram. Good morning, Tasha. It is an early morning. We are both drinking coffee out of red Disney mugs. And it's awesome. Oh, it's backwards. How you doing?
I'm great. I think it's a good place to be given our topic today, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
So today we are talking about the challenging parts of being a professional screenwriter. We are doing a 2-part series on the lifestyle of a writer, the good, the bad, the realities, whether it's right for you. But today we thought we would start with the challenging things. But first, Josh reminded me that I have something to talk about in This Week in Writing.
Let's go.
This Week in Writing.
Last week we did an episode on our coverage.
Yes.
And mine was for this script called Engaged. And I said, hey, if anyone wants to read the script, reach out to us and I'll send it to you. A couple people have reached out. So I haven't read this script in forever. And I ended up, as I was getting ready to send it, I was like, well, let me just take a quick peek at this script. And I actually enjoyed reading it.
Oh.
Now, to be fair, I can't remember what tweaks I made after the coverage because we had sent it and then I think a production company came on or producer came on and then I couldn't even remember. I actually changed the title of it some point after Engaged that I almost blacked out. I've told you this before. I don't remember anything from like the year 2020 to like 2022, like that COVID period. And I think this was part of it. I was like, wow, I don't understand what this is. Anyway, it was nice to revisit. I wish it was still kicking around. It's now kicking around in other people's inboxes. And I just wanted to say the coverage was brutal, but I reread the script. I felt a little better.
You felt pretty good. I love that. Because usually you go back and read scripts and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is an abomination.
It had those moments.
That's how I feel.
But it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
That's amazing.
Oh, I like this.
I mean, Kevin Hart attached himself for a reason.
It's company, not him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, same difference.
All right.
Okay. I watched How to Make a Killing, went to the theater, had some popcorn and some giant soda because that's all they have. And it was great, that experience. But the movie, we're watching it for our Patreon this month. So if you're interested in doing our Patreon Zoom Q&A for the month of March, sign up for our co-EP level of Patreon and you will receive a link to the Zoom, information on when this is, and also the script to How to Make a Killing, which started as a Blacklist script by the gentleman who ended up directing it as well.
Oh.
Who also did Emily the Criminal. So I'm going to save my thoughts, I guess, for that. A teaser is that I have a lot to say.
Did you read the script before seeing the movie?
I did not. I'm reading it after.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder if this is going to be on streaming before we do the Patreon meeting. Only because there's something always enjoyable about having the script open and watching the movie at the same time.
Yeah. I was in a theater and the only copy I have is digital, and I wouldn't want to bring my iPad and just be like flipping through. But I'm assuming this movie is going to be on streaming very quickly. So you should be able to see it on streaming, I imagine, before our Patreon event.
Yeah. Were there other people in the theater?
There were only 2 other people in the theater. However, it was at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Monday. So
Listen, I'm glad you went out. I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear your thoughts.
Thanks.
I'm having a theater crisis myself, which we can get into at a different day. But I did see Hoppers, and it was really good, so I recommend it.
You're like the 5th person to say that. So I'm usually the first one to go see animated movies, but the trailer did not do the thing for me. And so I was just like, I'm going to skip. It looked like a generic kids movie.
It had some heart. It had that Pixar heart.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Are we just doing this? We jumping in?
I technically have one more this week in writing.
Great.
It's a sad one. I don't know. Is it sad? It is an illustration of the topic we are about to embark on. So a book was submitted to me by a studio who wants to do a movie version of this book. And it's not great. But the studio is a studio that I want to work with, that I'd love to continue to work with in the future. And the process that I'm at now is I'm going to meet the executive very soon and just kind of talk about my takeaways from the book, hear their version of kind of what they're thinking, because they have their own thoughts and wishes for what this could be. And then I have to really think, do I have the bandwidth to pursue this without leaving behind some things that I actually love? Because Josh and I talk about on this podcast a lot of like sticking to writing what you love, because that script's going to be better anyways. And even if you're not getting paid on it because it's a spec, like that's going to be better than taking on a job that you hate that you're going to eventually suck at. So do I continue to pursue this pitch because it's a studio I want to work with? And no matter what, I'm going to find like my joy within this, but that's going to take time because it does suck. So like it's gonna have to like filter through things, change a bunch of stuff. So it just takes more brain power than an adaptation, than a book that was just a little bit more obvious. And I think that's an important point to make as well. I used to approach these things of like, okay, what do they want? What does the studio want? And let me try to give them the pitch that they would want. And I now approach it without caring at all what they want. And I do listen to my agents when they, give me their report on this as they present me the book. But I tend to just be like, okay, well, find my joy. What is the thing that's really cool in here that I could get excited about? And if I can get excited about, maybe they can as well. And I'll just go with that version. That way, if I do get this job, I'm not now writing a script that I hate. I'm writing a script that I actually got kind of excited about. But I'm still in this phase of like, do I do it or do I focus on my specs? And I know Josh should say focus on my specs. So that's kind of where I am this week.
Listen, I always say focus on specs, but also focus on getting jobs as well. I was going to say, I'm sure you're going to figure out a pathway into it and almost enhance the book. And that's something you're great at this, where you can digest something and be like, how can I make this better? And you just kind of go with it.
I'm going to try.
All right.
Okay. The screenwriter's lifestyle. And this topic kind of came up because something that Anna Halligan talked about in her interview a few weeks ago. Anna Halligan is the executive director of scripted series over at Legendary. And it's a really great episode. It's sort of a behind the scenes of what an executive thinks of us and our job. And also just what her job is. And in her story about how she got into the business, she talked about how she started as an actress and a comedian and then realized that lifestyle wasn't for her. And then she tried being a writer because she just knew she loved stories. And then she realized that lifestyle wasn't for her either. And so she just chose a different path within the same industry that she knew she would still love. And it felt like that was worth talking about, because I think screenwriting is objectively an amazing thing that many people would love to do. But what starts to filter people away is the real life version of what being a screenwriter is. And I feel like when we're planning our lives and we're setting up our dreams and imagining ourselves successful in our futures, we don't typically imagine the hard stuff, the lifestyle of this dream that we're aiming for. It's funny because just before this podcast, Josh was like, this is going to be a light episode. And I'm about to tell a dark story for a second.
Oh, man. All right.
But it's so, I just saw this and it feels like it bears, I don't know, repeating this story.
All right, let me just take a sip of my coffee.
I think you need one. Everyone do it at the same time.
Splash some whiskey inside this.
So Alan Ritchson has been going on the circuit because he has a new movie out called War Machine. Alan Ritchson is the actor who's in Reacher, if you guys remember. And he, in this interview that I saw, he talked about how he tried to commit suicide very recently.
Oh.
He tried to hang himself. And he said a really big reason why was because all of the things he had been working towards his whole life, not just working for, like clawing for, struggling for, like the thing that we live for, to be an actor, to make and produce movies and TV shows and all of that. He'd finally achieved it. He'd climbed that mountain. And when he got there, he realized there was nothing there. Like not any of the real stuff, right? The stuff that would actually make him meaningfully happy in a life-sustaining way. And it's something I talk a lot about with my husband, that if for some reason the business died tomorrow, like we lost all of our jobs to AI tomorrow, like what would I do? Would I just completely lose my shit? Would I not know how to handle it? Or would it be okay? And I think ultimately it would be okay. And I will never stop writing because I am a writer. It just will always be a thing that I do. But the business of screenwriting is ultimately something I feel like I can let go of if I absolutely had to. Which is all to say, like kind of as a prelude to all of this, that the life of a professional screenwriter does take everything you have, I think, to succeed at it and to have career longevity in it. And it is very hard to live your life with something kind of so all-consuming and also not let it define you and your happiness, especially as you're getting your start, I think, and trying to make a name for yourself. That clawing, that struggling that he was talking about is very much something I can relate to. And of course, like the dream is eventually to, I think, I mean, at least mine, I'll just speak for myself, was to just like leave LA eventually, buy a ranch in Montana, not have to see anybody here in LA, and like to just get calls of like, hey, you want to work? and that's like 1% of screenwriters, if not like 0.5% of screenwriters who can do that. But what we're going to talk about is kind of like what's life like for the rest of us, and like how do you survive it, but also like is it for you, because the lifestyle of it may just not be for you.
I just want to clarify, although I fully support your distancing and living on a ranch,
Yeah,
I love Los Angeles in this lifestyle. But yeah, I understand that. It wasn't, we can get into this, but it wasn't until like in the last year, I was just I think I was like in London, and I actually thought to myself, I was like, could I live here? Like, could this be a place that I could realistically live?
Yeah.
The roads led to no, just based off of my family and me and kind of time change and schooling and my wife's job and my job. So, but that was probably one of the first times in my life I was kind of like, I like London.
Besides practical things, though, like that, like, could you live there?
Yeah. I mean, I love London.
I'd live there in a second.
I would have to live there in like a very specific way, in a very specific area, and do very specific things.
They also have a great film industry there, so it's not too far away from what we would do.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna start. Writing is hard. Yes, of course, it's really fun. And when we're not doing it for a job, it's even more fun. But it is ultimately exceptionally hard to do it well. And I think to do it well consistently, time and again, over and over with every job that you get, the craft of it is just hard. And it's also different every single time. When we're just writing for ourselves, We can write whatever we want whenever we feel like we want it. And I'm not saying that there aren't screenwriters out there who can make a good living off of doing that, like just writing original specs. It's absolutely a viable way of having a career. But even writers like Tony Gilroy have really made his name off of adaptations of things, jobs that he got, not original stuff. So the job is hard. It's different every single time. And, when you work in an administration, when you work in administration in an office, for example, if you have a 9 to 5, you probably are pretty clear what your Monday to Friday is going to look like. And there may be some curveballs, but every single job we have as a screenwriter is completely different, with completely different people involved, different personalities, different struggles, different script problems to solve that you never saw coming and maybe have never dealt with before. Fielding notes, making sure the script stays good is also hard through that process. And just the craft, like Josh and I are constantly texting each other being like, how do I do this? Like, how do I get through this? What is the solution to this? And we've been doing it for years. And you are expected as a screenwriter to never drop the ball. You're always supposed to continually produce really good quality scripts. And that part of the job is just hard.
Yeah. I'm going to take a step back and say, let's say you don't live in LA. Let's say you do have the 9 to 5. Let's say you're trying to break into the industry or you're just getting going. Like the industry and the navigation and the writing, all of that stuff comes together, and that is very, very hard. And I think we've been out of it for so long that sometimes it's like you almost take it for granted of just kind of like how difficult it is to meet other writers who can give you notes on things and figure out time when you can write certain things and who's going to read this after you write it, and where do I send it after this? So like that whole process is so daunting that I think it can be debilitating often, where you're like, well, I want to get this to Netflix. Like if you're like in the Midwest or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to write something and I want Netflix to make it. You're like, okay, how does that work? Like, how are you going to do that? And then once you start realizing how actually difficult it is, it's almost, you can talk yourself out of it. Might as well say you're going to go play in the NFL next weekend.
Literally. Yeah.
So I agree with you, but it's not impossible. It's just one of the challenges that I think you face. A lot of this is like self-talk stuff where you're like, I shouldn't be doing this. So this is not worth my time. I have to do X, Y, and Z. So
but it's also just like an unexpected part of the job, right? Like, again, we imagine being a screenwriter is just writing and writing well. And I, even while working in the industry and getting my start, years into it, I was like, if I just write well, everything will be fine and I will succeed. And that's just not accurate. There are a lot of writers who are average or below average writers who are making a living because they have the other stuff in place. And that can be very disheartening, but that is part of what we talk about when we say lifestyle. There's just so much else going on besides getting to sit down at your computer and write a screenplay.
I agree.
I have a number 2.
Yeah, go.
It's really hard to make a living as a screenwriter. And even though I think your life could change overnight, it is very common for professional screenwriters to also have a day job or a part-time job. They teach, they do copywriting, they waitress, they drive Uber. I've heard all of it. And there are kind of like 2 main reasons for this. And I think the first is, again, writing a script is hard. And it's so hard that it is a full-time job. If you do get a job and you're lucky enough to get one, it's a full-time job. And then at the end of your full-time job, if you do not spend your free time looking for another job, then after you turn in that script, you're exactly where you were before you got the paid full-time job, which is nowhere. You're like back at 1, basically.
Yeah.
It's not similar to other industries in that way, in that like just because I wrote a movie does not mean that that company is simply going to give me another movie. I think the exciting thing about this industry is that it absolutely can happen that way. I absolutely can do this pitch to the studio that I was talking about before, do a great job on it. And they're like, by the way, Tasha, here's another thing I think you would be good at. It absolutely can happen. And that's the good stuff about this business and this lifestyle. But the bad stuff, the challenging thing, as Josh says, is that every single job you start from zero again. And for example, I have showrun 2 animated series. One was a huge title, one was a huge success. And last week I pitched to showrun another animated series, but I had to pitch on it, right? They didn't hand it to me. They didn't say, oh, because you have this experience and you've proven yourself, here is a job. They said, what's your take? And we're listening to 3 to 5 other people's takes. And it's all free work. I have to figure out how to turn their video game into an animated series, and I have to pitch to the producers and then the rights holders and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all for free. And that takes time, and it takes months even. And I have no new money coming in while I'm doing that. I'm starting from scratch. And the same thing happens if you're working in features. I got my first movie produced last year. I don't have another feature job lined up. I have to start all over in my search for another movie. And yes, I can write a spec, and I have, and I'm going to take that out as well. But that's just one part of my business to hopefully get a paycheck. The other part is I absolutely have to start pursuing OWAs, open writing assignments. Because you just don't know where your next job is going to come from. And also there's no sort of Indeed for screenwriters, right? There's no like job postings for these kinds of jobs.
Indeed. I was like, what is it? Yeah.
When you look for work in this business, it's a lot of meetings with companies to see if they have open writing assignments. It's a lot of writing pitches over the course of weeks and months that you don't get paid for. It's while also trying to create content for yourself, right? With like we're talking about with specs. But the point is that getting one job as a professional screenwriter does not then mean you get another job. You have to fight for every single one. And I think that is just extremely exhausting. And I think a main reason why so many people quit the job is because it's impossible to get your first job. And as my agents always reminded me, it's even harder to get your second job. And then I would say maybe like the second real reason screenwriters may take second jobs is that they probably live in Los Angeles, because especially as you're starting out and even getting to like mid-level type of writer, you almost have to be here to really get your career moving and really meet people. Of course, there are always exceptions and asterisks to this. But if you do live in LA, rent, food, gas in Los Angeles is exceedingly expensive. If you own a vehicle, which you absolutely have to, all of your state registration and upkeep for your car is just extremely high. It's all very high. And the minimum wage for a feature job is $38,000, which is going to be paid to you over the course of at least 4 months, probably more likely a year. Without any other job to supplement that, it can be impossible to just live in Los Angeles. So that is a part of the lifestyle is just, I don't know, it's insecurity, financial insecurity.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. My friend and I had referred to this as like the work-life balance, meaning you often have your job and then you screenwrite, which is also work, and then you have your life and you're trying to figure out that balance, which is not easy to do.
The next thing that I would say is a part of our lifestyle as a screenwriter is our independence. And I think it's both a good thing and a bad thing. So here I'm going to talk about why it can be very difficult. When you are not chained to an office and a boss, it is truly the greatest gift you can give yourself. But also having no structure and being isolated in your home with just your thoughts and blank pieces of paper can be truly maddening. And I think your life can become small if you let it become small. And I think structure can be really hard for a lot of people to give themselves without the help of a boss or work hours, especially if that's been how you've lived your life for the most part as an adult. And then if you cannot manage your time yourself and deliver scripts on time and deliver them well, and also use that time that you have to find additional work. If you cannot just manage all of that yourself because you do not have anyone helping you with that, you will just not continue to get hired. And I think that can be very difficult for people because there is no rule book for success, and there is also no one way. And while that is both exciting, it is very daunting and scary for people who are looking for a rule book of like, okay, I can do the steps if you just tell me what they are. There are none. And so you really like time management becomes extremely important. Understanding the business and the steps you need to take so that you can get that next job are all very important. And it's all managed yourself. And we have managers, they do exist. And from time to time, my manager will sit down with me and we'll be like, okay, let's talk about your calendar. This week you should be working on this project. And that's very helpful. But that is rare. And yeah, it's really on you. You're the boss now.
Yeah, this is such a good point because the independence to me, I was thinking about this as like one of the great things about being a screenwriter.
I think it is.
But you're absolutely right. And I think people don't think they need structure, but they need structure a lot more than they realize.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I've dealt with people who just need to be told what to do in a way that they're not being told directly what to do, but it's just kind of like, hey, this is a deadline for this. This needs to be done here, here, here. And that's really hard to self-impose. Very hard. Unless you don't unless there's someone on top of you coming down and saying this, your boss essentially, people really mess around.
Yeah, it's true. It is very difficult, even if you don't intend to. And every time I get a job in features, I'm always asked, so what do you think your timeline is? And now I'm better at knowing myself. But when, the first few jobs, I was like, I have no idea how to answer this question. Also, because like every script is different. This script might end up being really challenging and I might need like a whole extra month just to solve this one scene. I just don't know. And, the WGA gives you 12 weeks to write a first draft of a feature. So that's just like a model to use. But I've certainly gone over because I needed more time. And I've certainly gone over because something personal happened in my life that just completely upended that schedule and it was impossible to avoid. And that just happens. And yeah, if you don't know how to manage yourself and be your own boss, and it's a skill that you can learn, by the way, guys, it's not like you have to have it, you turn on a switch or you don't have a switch at all. It's something you can absolutely learn, but it can take some people longer than others. And if your brain just doesn't work that way, this might not be for you. Okay, the next one that can be a challenging thing for certain people, depending on clearly not Josh, but it's the culture and community of screenwriters can, of course, be very great. And we will talk about it in the great things about this job. But the number one thing I hear TV writers complain about is other writers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because TV writers deal with other writers on a daily basis in writers' rooms, unlike feature writers who are just at home banging their head against the wall in silence. And the thing that TV writers complain about consistently are writers who are competitive and cruel and will sacrifice you in order to get ahead. And I think it is important to remember that this is a crazy multi-billion-dollar business, which means people will throw you under the bus. People will say one thing and do another behind your back. People will try to sabotage you actively, like in the weirdest ways. They will try to sabotage your movie so theirs can go or whatever. I'm not saying that it happens with every single job, but it doesn't even happen with every 10 jobs, I would say. But it will at some point, I think, happen to you. It's happened to both Josh and I. Something weird has happened and we had a breakup with someone or we got yelled at or something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just part of our business.
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones. I feel like this is a really good point because I think a lot of times people think that we're in some kind of widespread culture where people are trying to uplift each other and like, oh, I hope this. And yeah, that I think we're probably surrounded by more people who are like that than not at this point. But, early on or something, people are very competitive. And we're going over all the reasons why this is so hard. And if there's like a shot out there for an individual, there's resentful writers. And yeah, there's a lot of backstabbing and a lot of things that are going on and people are saying certain things about you that it just kind of comes with it. That's just the way it is. And yes, going to this point, the other writers thing, this is also something where you read another script. I remember early on, I'd read something and I'd be like, this guy got this produced? This is terrible.
Yeah, I know. Like, I hate this guy.
I wouldn't hate the guy, but I would just be like, what is going on? It would drive me. It was like drive me nuts. And then at some point you're like, okay, well, there's a lot at play here. This happened. And when you start realizing that, and then I don't know, you don't want to be the resentful writer also doing this. That is the worst possible place to be in. Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily call the culture of Hollywood cutthroat, at least for screenwriters. I think it can be for other people in this industry. Because I don't consider myself cutthroat. And I think when I think about the lifestyle, being cutthroat isn't a part of being a professional screenwriter. Like, I'm not cutthroat. I do just fine. But I do think it's important to know that you are swimming with sharks in this industry. And if that scares you and you want no part of that, then you're going to have to just think about that. And one story that comes to mind is one I have talked about on the podcast before, that Josh knows very well because he knew a producer who is involved in this story. But I once pitched on a movie not that long ago, before the pandemic, but still like relatively not that long ago. And this would have been a dream movie for me. And I worked really hard on the pitch, time-wise, effort-wise. It just was a lot. And I made it past the producer, and I went on to the studio executive who would be the one deciding to hire me. And they loved it. They loved my pitch. It was clear that I went above and beyond other people who had pitched. They really loved the story that I'd crafted. But ultimately, they called my agent and said that I did not get the job because they did not believe I could handle the big personalities involved with the movie. There was an A-list actress who had really strong opinions. There were several A-list old school Hollywood producers with decades of experience. And so I did not get the job because basically they did not think I could handle the culture of the movie, which is all to say, again, this job is not just about the writing. It's about a whole lot of other things that you may not be interested in being a part of.
Yeah. Or like writing a script and then having the director producer trying to take your name off the script and become the writer of it.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that could happen.
Something like that could happen. Another part of this lifestyle that is very difficult for people, is challenging for people, is rejection. Expect rejection daily. Your pitch will get rejected. Your script will get rejected. Your ideas will get rejected. You personally might get rejected, as in the previous story. People will constantly be telling you no, and that you did something wrong, and that your ideas are bad, and your execution was bad, and you'll get coverage like we got in last week, and we still have to power through. I think rejection is not only inevitable in this business, it is frequent. And you cannot let it slow you down. You cannot become angry. You cannot become bitter. You cannot become resentful. And there is certainly no time to be depressed, which is why I highly recommend therapy if you're going to get into this job. To live your life as a professional screenwriter does mean you just will have to learn how to deal with rejection in a healthy way, or it will destroy you.
Yeah. It's hard.
It's hard. You gotta just not take it personally, which is so hard to do because you put your whole life on paper, and sometimes it's like literally your life. Like I wrote about my mom, and then you're telling me that this story sucks. You're like, but this is my life. My life sucks.
Listen, I take it all personally. It's just one of those things of like, how can I properly deal with this?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're 100% right. Exactly what you just said. When you like write something personal and it's about your mom or something, they're like, I just don't think this wouldn't like happen.
It's not believable.
Like this. It's not believable. You're like, this like happened. Now it's actually a little more sensationalized, sure, but it's this.
Wait, I've had something before where I wrote a scene about something that like I did in my own life, but it like seemed to fit in the screenplay, and I was like, oh, like this will help it feel more grounded. And the note I got back was like, this character is really unlikable in this scene. So yeah, the rejection is very personal in this job. The next thing that I would say is,
how many bad things do we have? Jesus.
I only have two more.
I'm kidding.
I could probably go on, but there's only
we could
two more.
do an entire bad thing episode.
It is actually a people person job, which I don't think is something that we expect as screenwriters. The thing I love the most about writing, especially when I was coming up, was I get to be alone while I do this, and that's incredible. I get to be alone. I like not have to talk to people for days because I'm just in this story, and it's so amazing. And for features, it was kind of even more amazing because you could just hand it to someone and like they'll go make it, and I don't even have to deal with it. I could just move on to something else. And for a long time, I thought like, that's exactly what I want. It's just to be in a room by myself, hand it to someone, they'll go make it, and I'll just do something else while they're doing that. I've since kind of come around to potentially directing and you know, just getting more involved with stuff. But it's not that job, I guess, is the point. It's not sitting in a room by yourself and never talking to people. It's constantly talking to people. My job is constantly talking to people. And I am a quiet, shy, naturally introverted person. And this has been a very difficult part of the job for me, to learn how to do it well, and to become comfortable with it has been very difficult for me.
Interesting.
You are naturally extroverted.
Well, I definitely am introverted as well, I think, some aspects. But where I would say I don't mind talking to people at all. I actually really enjoy it. But
No.
what it does to me is it will drain me. And like if I have to deal with people and then I'll start having to write, I'm like thinking about a conversation I had or something like, and then you're just exhausted. And you're like, I don't have the brain power right now to do this. I just talked to 7 different people about different things and the same thing or whatever at different times or different and then it just like throws your schedule off and all the different things. You're just exhausted.
Yeah. It's exhausting, and it's also, if you're like me, if my description of myself at all resonates for you, there is sort of a persona you have to take on in order to like sort of successfully be around people in this industry. And I would always joke when I were coming up, Josh, that like I needed you to go pitch for me because like you were so good at like just talking to people and being excited and getting people excited about things. I was like, that's the energy I need for a pitch, and I'm not good at that. So I'll give you the script, you just go do it. Because a big part of the people person part is not just how exhausting it is. It certainly is, because you have all these meetings and pitches and whatever, but it's also like being personable is so important, because let's say I am an executive who has money to spend, and I have an open writing assignment, and I hear 3 pitches from writers, and one writer has the greatest story of all time, but they are just kind of like, they talk like this and they just look down at the ground and they can't actually be personable to me. Do I really want to work with this person for like the few years it's going to take to develop this and make this into a movie? Is this person going to like be able to take notes from me and like I just don't know about this. That's a pass. And then say the second person is like maybe has like a pretty good story. I could hire this person, but their ego is out of control. And I know that they're not going to be able to take notes from me. They're not going to listen. It's going to have to be wrangling them all the time. And then there's a person who may have a less, a lesser story, but they're pleasant and personable, and I can't wait to work with them. I think, I could make this script work with this person. That can happen all the time. And so I'm not saying you have to put on a face. Like, I am naturally friendly as well, but
Yeah.
I would prefer not to have to pitch to a room of 12 people. I would prefer not to have to justify my idea to a 20 room exec Zoom call, but I do. And you have to do it well, and you have to do it with confidence. You have to seem confident. You have to be friendly. You have to do all of these things that you sort of don't have to do to write by yourself. And it's important to know that that is something you will have to be good at. Okay. The last thing I'll say about sort of the challenging stuff is, I think, the biggest one, which is uncertainty. And I think it is the biggest buy-in to the lifestyle of a screenwriter, is that our lives are constantly uncertain. Every year my accountant asks me, how much are you going to make in this next year? And every year I tell them, I have no fucking clue. It could be $1 million. It could be literally zero. I don't know. And the scariest part about the uncertainty is that you have no control over it, right? If you have a regular job, you can kind of predict your income and your budget. It's easy to understand the steps you need to take to get promoted. Maybe it's a little extra schooling. Maybe you just work a little harder. You take on more responsibilities, but there are no tangible things you can do as a screenwriter to ensure that you can make your rent in any given year. Now, that's not to say there isn't plenty that is in your control. I think there is. You can write spec scripts, you can network, you can go to general meetings, you can pitch on OWAs, but you can do all of that perfectly and still not get a job, which is what kind of doesn't make sense, right? Because at the end of the day, someone needs to buy that spec script. Someone you meet at a networking event or at a general has to remember you in the exact right moment that there is an opportunity. Someone has to buy your pitch, and none of that is in your control, which means Josh and I can work 12-hour days for 52 weeks in a row and be no closer to having a paid job at the end of that year. And that, I think, is the killer. And that's why we have part-time jobs. It's why we quit the business. It's why we sometimes realize this lifestyle is not for us because that uncertainty is very difficult. It is the biggest struggle that we have.
I think this is without question, to me, the biggest one. The uncertainty aspect, especially as you get more responsibilities in your life, whether that be a significant other, whether that be a child or whatever, and kind of figuring out where your life is going and how you just can pay rent and live your, this to me, I think is like we were just talking about. People really, I think, do well with structure. And when that structure, even just, hey, I'm going to get paid X amount of money this week or this month, when that goes away, it's very scary.
So those are the challenging things about being a screenwriter, a professional screenwriter. And if all of those scare you and make you not want to do this job, maybe hold on and wait until next week when we talk about all the amazing parts about the lifestyle of a screenwriter. And that may just be enough to make you realize, okay, maybe I can do it and suffer through those things, those challenging things, because those things are just so worth it, which we are in the camp that they are, because that's why we're doing it. All right, quote of the day. Forget about inspiration because it's more likely to be a reason not to write, as in, I can't write today because I'm not inspired. The most valuable characteristic any would-be writer can possibly have is persistence. Just keep at it, keep learning your craft, and keep trying. No matter how tired you get, no matter how you feel like you can't possibly do this, somehow you do. Octavia E. Butler. Please remember to rate and subscribe. Follow us at ActTwoWriters for more awesome writing stuff. You can follow me, Tasha, at Story Thursday on Instagram. I guess we're on Twitter at Tasha 3.0.
Oh, you buckled. I'm Josh Hallman on Instagram.
As always, the Act Two podcast is a production of Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This episode was edited by Paul Lundquist.